Well, good evening and welcome to another episode of Home Theater United. I'm Sam Poston, and tonight I am joined by a superstar guest, Mr. George Feltenstein from the Warner Archive Collection. George, you want to say hey?
Hey there.
Well,
Glad to be
welcome,
here with you, Sam.
welcome. We have this has been in the works for oh boy, many months now, and that is all thanks to Ron Epstein, one of the co-owners of Home Theater Forum. And Ron and you have been good friends for a long time, and you've been an amazing friend to Home Theater Forum and now Home Theater United. And so we can't thank you enough for that. And I definitely really appreciated getting to travel out there to Warner back in the day, and I know that's not in any near future, but if I had one genie wish, it would be to do another Home Theater Forum meet out there, because you guys were so welcoming and accepting and so awesome to the forum. So thank you for that.
I would love to see that happen, and it's actually been, I think, 24 years
Wow.
since the first time we did a home theater forum chat.
Okay.
And I was not only participatory, but I was also doing the typing because it wasn't that easy to respond quickly to questions.
Sure.
And
Boy, the internet
I
has
tell you,
changed since then.
yeah.
So that's
So,
awesome. I don't think I've been on vacation in 6 years, so I've really got it bottled up. But someday we'll get
it's
back out there.
it's despicable how long it's been since I've been on a vacation.
Hmm.
So I won't even bore the people who are listening by talking about that. Let's just say that I love my work,
Yeah.
and workaholism precludes vacation,
Oh,
but I'm a happy workaholic,
well,
so
you
that's a
you
good thing.
you have been the face of the Warner Archive, I guess, since its inception. Can you tell? And you're also listed as the historian for Warner, for the Warner Archive. Can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day job?
Well, to just go back, my title used to be I was the senior vice president of theatrical catalog marketing
Okay.
for Warner Home Video, and then um, over the years, the concept of the Warner Archive was actually an idea. I've talked about this before. Jim Wethridge, who's the president of our division, which is actually called content licensing,
Okay.
because of all the changes and everything that
Mm-hmm.
have been going on around here. Jim came to me with this idea of being able to bring content to market that normally wouldn't have a place in a video store. You remember video stores,
I
right,
do. I
Sam?
do.
Don't
I mean, they were
you
a
know?
big part of my childhood and sorely missed.
I miss them too, and more than you know.
Yeah.
I used to love getting up on a Sunday morning and going to Tower Video and Virgin Video, and just prowling through the aisles, and there's
Sure.
it's not the same on the internet.
Yeah,
So,
we used to do
uh,
those together as the Home Theater Forum. We would get together and go up to New York City from all corners. Folks on the East Coast would just travel up to New York City and go to the big Virgin Megastore and stuff like that up there.
I can appreciate that being an ex-New Yorker.
Yeah.
There's no place better to shop in the world
Yep.
than Manhattan. But anyway, to make a very long story short, we got this idea for manufacturing on demand
Yeah.
uh, DVDs, and we announced it uh, on March 23rd, 2009, at the last time there was a home theater forum chat.
I see. Okay.
And the business took off beyond our wildest expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of coincided with the demise or diminishment of retail catalog availability.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So as a result, that kind of became my full time job. And I actually had a lateral move into Warner Brothers digital distribution, which was separate from Warner Home Video.
Mm-hmm.
And then they put it all back together in 2013.
I see.
And so now I'm in a very unique position because I have a role that really allows me to take care of our library across the entire organization. And I was kind of doing that off the record.
Gotcha.
Anybody who needed my help involving library related material or questions, I would always be happy to help. I didn't care what division they worked for, or what would it do for my bonus. There's a lot of people that only care about themselves and they're not company people
Hmm.
in any organization. I'm not talking about Warner Brothers.
Sure.
But I'm the type of person that's, very collegial. And I like to think of our company ideally as a workers' cooperative, that we're all equals and we're all on a mission to do the best thing we can to maximize profits for our shareholders and make our library available to as many people as possible. So to do so and make a profit, that is the goal. And to make consumers happy, and I am one of the consumers myself,
Hmm.
that is my personal goal, to make the very best products and releases and to do so in a profitable manner. And that's what we've been trying to do and hopefully will continue to do for a long time to come.
Well,
My
that's all.
fingers are crossed.
That's awesome, and we're definitely going to dig into the future and history of the MOD and how that differs from streaming and stuff like that. But before we do that, we got to talk about the big elephant in the room. But before we do that, can you just tell us how big the library is? What are we talking about as far as what you have access to?
Well, basically, I would say a rounded number about 8,000 feature films.
Mm-hmm.
And we estimate about 35,000 hours
Wow.
of television programming
Wow.
and probably over 10,000 short subjects, both
Mm.
animated and live action.
Wow. That's
It's enormous. It's the industry's largest, and I think I may be a little prejudiced, but I think it's by far the best library in the industry,
well. It's
as
certainly
well as the largest.
it's certainly a treasure trove, and going through even at a half dozen titles every month or two, you would be at that rock for a while chipping away at it for sure.
Yes.
So let's talk about that elephant, which is that you guys have changed over from being I guess it was like a wholly owned subsidiary of Warner Archive and Warner Brothers, and now you're part of this Warner Brothers Discovery conglomeration. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, absolutely. There was something really awful in the middle between Time Warner and Warner Brothers Discovery, and that was AT&T.
Mm,
Um,
the evil empire.
AT&T bought Time Warner,
Mm-hmm.
and they they realized after a couple of years that they made a mistake
Yep.
because they didn't know anything about our business. And we have a new owner as of April, Discovery, and Warner Brothers Discovery was born in April of this past year. And our new CEO, David Zaslav, really impressed me before the merger, started. And he had his first day. It was about a year in between the announcement and his first day. But he is sitting in Jack Warner's old office
Mm-hmm.
with Jack Warner's old desk. He requested that they
Nice.
bring Jack Warner's desk out of the corporate archive, and that is where he's sitting. I believe he's here today because he's New York and Burbank. He goes
Mm-hmm.
between both places. But I'm very hopeful because he seems to have a lot of respect for the legacy of the company and the library. And I also think that whereas when AT&T owned us, there were a lot of enormous amounts of layoffs. Amazing people had their jobs
No.
eliminated. And one of the problems from that is that you've got a skeletal staff in many departments at the studio really doing the work of two or three people.
I see.
And I think morale will improve dramatically once these new folks get a chance to get through all the changes. We're in the middle of all the changes right
Hmm.
now, and I'm I'm being very, very optimistic. And I spent the first few years of my home video career at MGM Home Video, um, and then came to Warner Brothers. And I was the head of MGM Home Video when I was 30,
I see.
which was kind of a heady experience.
I believe it.
And Warner Brothers was our distributor. And when I worked at MGM, uh, we had a new owner or a new CEO like every year, it seemed.
Hmm.
So corporate instability is something I'm very used to. Unfortunately, one of the reasons I wanted to come to Warner was it was the most respected, most stable company in the industry. The last few years have been very difficult, but I'm hoping we're on the other side of all the pain. And on that note, I'd love to be able to share. First, I want to apologize to all our faithful customers because about a year ago, I was on another podcast and I said that 2022 was going to be our greatest year yet. And I had planned out the whole year, so indeed that would be the case. And that didn't happen because I had the carpet kind of pulled out from under me
Sure.
because of the constrictions
Hmm.
with the upcoming merger and the layoffs, and we did not have enough people to actually bring more product to market. So the good news is that happy days are on the horizon, and I would say we'll push it to 2023 being that bang up year.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple of nice things coming for the balance of the year. But just to give you another example, I had spoken on a podcast a couple of months ago that Jerry Beck, the animation historian and one of my best friends, we had come up with a new animation concept. And it took me 4 or 5 months to finally get it blessed by all the people who had to bless it.
Hmm.
Uh, and by that time, we needed to bring nitrate film in from the East Coast to the West Coast. And you can't move nitrate film during the hot summer months.
Sure. Yeah.
So as a result, this project, which I hoped would be ready for the fourth quarter, won't happen until
Mm.
next year. But it will happen, and
That's
it will
awesome.
make animation collectors really happy.
Awesome.
So that's kind of where we are. But to explain my position is I'm the basically Warner Media, soon to be put back to Warner Brothers library historian, and I basically oversee uh, making sure that everything involving the library is done properly and correctly, and I coordinate with the people at TCM and at HBO Max. And of course, Warner Archive is kind of my baby, and
Hmm.
I look after it. And the child has been kind of on a very restricted diet lately, and that's going to change really soon for the better.
That's great.
So good news is on the horizon.
So given all of that, it is the strategy set in stone at this point? Can you say is like Warner streaming first, or is there some way that you can put hierarchically streaming versus digital purchase versus
Well, here's the great thing.
physical? Yeah.
About
Well,
this.
I guess it's a difference of perspective, right? Some people see that library as a resource to be, strip mined versus something that's got to be curated. And you certainly are a curator and somebody who tries to do things thoughtfully and not just, strip out the crown jewels and sell them for, pennies on the dollar kind of thing. So, and I think that's what Home
Well,
Theater Forum has responded to all these years too.
no, absolutely. And this has always been kind of a pain point for me is at most of the other studios when it comes to library, and not your top crown jewels, but
Mm-hmm.
just underneath the top, let's say 25, they make, some CPA, who has no knowledge of film and no knowledge of what these motion pictures are. This is not a commodities business.
Right.
This is not pork bellies. These are works of art, or not works of art,
Mm-hmm.
but they're entertainment to somebody.
Sure.
And they need to be gotten to the people that want to have them, and in my opinion, hopefully own them.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
When I was a kid, I would have loved to own a movie, and it was not possible. And then videotape came along, and you could buy video cassettes, and eventually they became affordable. And where I really went whole hog is with Laserdisc.
I
And I
see.
was very active in terms of producing them and distributing them, but they were never really a business that got beyond niche, because they were so expensive to make,
Yeah.
and the penetration in households was very small. Uh, but we did wonderful things, and I say we, the industry, not
Mm-hmm.
not what I was working on, but the whole industry in general was doing a lot of really great things, and people didn't mind paying $125
For a
for a
single
special
title.
edition of a movie. And now people complained about spending $20 on a
Yeah.
Blu-ray.
Yeah.
So it's a generational kind of thing. But now, in terms of your streaming first question,
Yeah.
the prior CEO, who was brought here by AT&T, he basically eliminated a lot of norms.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things he did that didn't go over too well with the artistic and creative community was he had movies going because of the pandemic. He had movies day and date in what theaters were open and on HBO Max.
Right.
And in doing so, he eliminated the home video window.
Yeah.
And as of the movie Elvis, the home video window was back,
Nice. Okay.
meaning Elvis played in the theater, made money, successful.
Yeah.
A lot of people liked what Baz Luhrmann did with that movie.
Yeah.
And for several weeks before it went to HBO Max, the only way you could see it was to either buy it digitally or download it digitally.
I see. Okay.
And the physical availability was synchronous with when it was on HBO Max.
I see.
So that was a much better compromise than home video being cut out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still a very viable business. And the way I look at it, there's a place for everything. You just need to think smart and really know what you're doing. And we have people here that are very smart, that know what they're doing. And the new owners have embraced home entertainment rather than looking at it as a dinosaur. It still makes a lot of money.
Yeah.
It is not there's a time in the early aughts where studios were making more money from home entertainment than from theatrical.
Right.
Those
Yeah.
days are long gone, but nonetheless,
Yeah.
it's still a very, very viable business.
Yeah. So,
And that's why I'm here.
great. That's great. Yeah, from my own perspective, I've explained it to people that I'm an and, not an or. I do streaming and purchases and discs where they make sense. And I think a lot of people are going to be very excited that Warner's going to continue to support all of those. But as part of that,
Well,
go ahead.
you and I are exactly the same. I have almost 1,000 movies in my digital locker,
Mm-hmm.
but I have about 8 or 9,000 movies between various formats on my shelves.
Sure.
And if I'm going to want to watch anything, if I'm not too lazy to get up off the couch,
Yep.
I'm not going to watch something that's streaming if I've got a 4K disc or a
Yep.
Blu-ray disc,
Yep.
on the shelf inside, because I know the difference. I can tell the difference hands down. And being able to hold the disc in your hand, you're not going to have to worry about your internet going out.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to have to worry about too many people using the internet.
Yep.
Now I think there will come a time in the future where streaming will reach the quality
Yep.
of what you can get on a physical disc.
Yep.
But then again, I've had the misfortune, and maybe you have too, of buying something digitally and suddenly it's not in my locker anymore.
Yeah. Or
What
or
happened to it?
or they change the
I
music behind it or something crazy like that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had bought something from a platform where I'm guessing they had a limited amount of time to sell it.
Mm.
And, their rights expired or whatever. At Warner Brothers, we don't do that. If we sell something digitally, we lost the rights to two independent production companies' libraries, and one went to another studio and the other went to another studio.
Mm-hmm.
But if you bought the digital copy from us, you didn't have to take it out of it wasn't
Right.
removed from your
Yeah.
library. And that's the way it should be.
So you had mentioned the movies on demand program. Is that gone, and has streaming killed that, or is it
Oh,
other
no.
factors?
No, 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 no. We with Warner Archive, we were manufacturing on demand with DVD-Rs.
Mm-hmm.
And the DVD-R got a bum rap from the very beginning. It was looked upon as a second-class citizen, and people thought it was like DVD-Rs that you make in your house.
Right.
And it was a very, very cumbersome, sophisticated process. It was expensive, but it also meant that we didn't have inventory. We started
Sure.
with 150 titles that day that I did the last forum chat on HTF, and we're now at over 4,000,
Oh.
with about 450 being Blu-rays, and our Blu-rays are not BDRs. I would never have allowed that. They've been replicated at the replicator that makes our retail disc from day one, and that has been a source of confusion. What we do is we replicate modest quantities and watch the orders and manage it very carefully so we can fill the need, but not be a business where you're filling up warehouses in Memphis filled with discs that nobody knows what to do with. So it's a very efficient business. And again, we went through a little bit of we're nearing the end of a little bit of a dark time.
Mm-hmm.
And the bright lights have been confirmed as being turn onable, and great things are lying ahead. So we just had a little bit of a delay, and we will be back on track. And the kind of things that we sell are not usually, there's some crossover, but they're not usually the kind of things that you find at a streaming service, which brings up a point that about 10 years ago, we started Warner Archive Instant. We started our own streaming service.
Gotcha.
And we thought there'd be a great business for that. Everybody was working together, basically doing double duty. And we were making lots of cool TV and film stuff available that weren't a title.
Right.
That was cool titles. They were interesting titles.
Yeah, yeah.
And if we had just gotten a little more support corporately, I think we were the first studio-based streaming service. So it was taken away from us, I would say, probably 2 years later. But so it never really got a chance. But I'm very proud that we did that. And it was actually one of my colleagues who came up with the idea. And we found that having these films available for streaming actually helped physical sales, because if people were watching something on streaming and say, I want to own that.
Right, yeah.
And they'd end up buying it.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing doesn't have to be sacrificed for the other.
That's
Now,
awesome.
one of the things that has happened is as we've been going through these years leading up to the darkness of having layoffs and staff cuts, we had to trim what we were doing to be the most profitable things. And Blu-ray was and is our primary focus for the moment, and we kind of had to taper down on the DVD-Rs
Sure.
and the very, very, very obscure movies we were releasing on DVD-Rs because the same amount of manpower was needed to get those releases out that weren't going to bring that much money in.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to focus on our Blu-ray business, and I do think there will be a time where we'll probably be able to open up the DVD valve a little bit, depending on if we're able to staff up. Because right now, staffing at this company is kind of like a turkey carcass after a carnivorous dinner. We're just, I mean,
Yep.
down to the bone.
Yep.
And it's a tribute to all of my colleagues who work so hard, their dedication, because there's something very special about working at Warner Brothers. And I feel very fortunate to come here every day. And I know a lot of people feel the same way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I had forgotten that you did have the Blu-rays on demand too. So that's cool. There it wasn't really my wheelhouse with the interest that I've got going on, but I know we have a lot of huge fans of both the DVDs and Blu-rays at Home Theater Forum. So I'm glad to hear that that's going to continue.
Well,
So
and the big difference is the discs are manufactured not on demand. They're manufactured in limited quantities
mhm.
and then assembled on demand as the orders come in. The packaging is printed and the the inlay is put into the to the Amray case
Mhm.
or the Elite case, I should say, for the case for Blu-ray, and so that's how that works. And it took a couple of years, but other studios are now starting to do some of the same thing. And I think that's good for everybody.
That's awesome. Like I said, I do know that there are quite a few folks at Home Theater Forum that take advantage of that a lot. So that'll make them very happy. So I know that this is a huge period of transition and change. Do you have a good idea what your near future looks like?
Uh, yeah, I mean, basically, we're going to be able to turn the lights back on
Mm-hmm.
in having a more normalized cadence of hopefully 4 to 6 Blu-rays a month as opposed to one or two. And that makes me incredibly happy. And in the meantime, uh, we have been during this dark period, we've been remastering dozens and dozens of films. Almost all of them are 4K scans from either original negative or the best surviving elements. And there are going to be a lot of surprises and a lot of things people have been really wanting, which I think is going to make for a lot of happiness among collectors.
Well,
Exclusive.
you hear you heard it here first, folks. That's the big news. So we're very much looking forward to that. As part of that, Adam Lenhart, one of our members, asked if the sale is having effects on preservation. How has the role of film preservation changed, and is that coming out of the dark ages too, or is that a little bit further behind?
I'm happy to say that that has never been hindered, and it actually has its antecedents in the preservation program that began at MGM
Mm-hmm.
60 years ago when they started converting nitrate to safety.
Yep.
And I happen to have had the pleasure of working for the gentleman, Roger Mayer, that was responsible primarily for that. Because at that time, only two studios were preserving their films properly from nitrate to safety, MGM and Disney. Nobody else was doing it. Later, everybody did it. But the key to that is that in 1981, MGM bought United Artists.
Yep.
And United Artists was the owner of the pre 49 Warner Brothers library. So when MGM bought UA, they started applying the preservation principles to the pre 49 Warner library. And then in 1986, Turner Broadcasting bought MGM, and UA was kept by Kirkakorian. It was a very complicated transaction. But part of that transaction moved the pre 49 Warner Brothers library, and without making things too more complicated, the RKO library, all under what was then MGM Entertainment. Then Ted couldn't afford to keep the company, so he sold the name MGM back to Kirkakorian, and MGM Entertainment Company became Turner Entertainment. All he had was the library. And for 10 years, he oversaw the marketing of the library and the preservation of the library. 10 years later, in 1996, Time Warner bought Turner. And that reunited the Warner Brothers library, both pre 49 and post 49, for the first time in 40 years. And it also brought the pre 86 MGM library and the RKO library all under Warner ownership. And so Roger Mayer went to the management here at Warner Brothers and said, you need to continue the preservation program that started at MGM and continued at Turner, and you must continue this at Warner Brothers to take care of these films. And they said yes.
That's awesome.
And that was 26 years ago. And every year there's been a healthy preservation budget. And we haven't gotten our budgets for next year yet, but we're pretty confident that next year it will continue. And what we've been doing in the last few years, I've jokingly referred to as preservation on steroids, because the amount of content that we are preserving and restoring is at an all-time high.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's incredible. We're getting to do things that I just didn't think was possible and would become possible. And it's happening as we speak. And just this morning, I saw new completed masters on two amazing films, one from the 1940s, one from the 1930s, and they're going to be coming out on Blu-ray. And they'll be coming from Warner Archive, and people will be really happy with them. And, hopefully we'll be able to continue to please people who like different kinds of films.
Yeah.
Because that's really important to me. It's not about what I like or what Joe Smith down the street likes. It's about trying to please everyone. And you can't please everyone.
Well,
no matter what we do, there's always somebody who's got to, complain and moan about something. But by and large, people have been very grateful and supportive, and we're tremendously grateful for the support.
Well, just having done this exercise in prepping to talk to you, there are titles I never heard of that are very, very important to the Home Theater Forum membership. And I know we're going to dig into that in just a little bit. But yeah, it's awesome to see. And a lot of the other studios are pretty good at this, but I don't think anybody's nearly as good as Warner is in just, going across the catalog and finding new and old and, hidden treasures and stuff like that to bring out. So I'm super excited to hear what you got in the pipeline.
Well, I'm excited to share as much as I can.
Sure.
And I have to put a caveat on that. There were we did Home Theater Forum chats, I think, for 11 years. And there were times where something would be greenlit and we were going to do it. And then we found there was a problem with Film Element or something like that, and a title I said was going to come out didn't come out or got really delayed. And people would be going the forums, because I read the forums every day, all of them.
Yep.
I don't think many studio executives do that, but I do, because I want to know what the people are saying. And some of the people aren't very nice, but most of them are great.
Yep.
There's always a few rotten apples out there, but that's why there's better living through chemistry for those folks.
Sure. But I mean, the one thing about movies is that unlike any other business, it's a business, it's an art, it's technology, and and any one of those can be a hang up for you. And I think the vast majority of our members understand that, that there's nothing guaranteed with those things and problems happen. But if somebody's got their heart set on something that they haven't seen since they were a kid, and I know I've got my favorites that aren't coming to Blu-ray anytime soon, it becomes difficult to separate that, want versus the reality of the situation.
Well, when you do it right, the way I hope we do. Because when we do things on Blu-ray, there's no dirt, there's no, we don't let things go and do a B+ job or an A- job. It has to be A+. Now, we've also had some mistakes
Sure.
and some errors.
Yeah.
And I want to address two of them, which never got addressed. And that is 2 years ago, we released a movie called The Opposite Sex.
Yep.
And I always get a screener of everything. And I noticed that the audio was mono instead of stereo. So I raised hell and got a replacement screener. And the proper stereo track was used. And on top of all this, our people sent out the wrong master anyway.
Oh no.
So
they used the old one. That's what happened.
The discs got manufactured from the wrong master. Now, this is something I don't have the answer for yet, but we'll try to communicate it. I'll probably work something out with Ron at HDF, but all of the inventory in stock with our manufacturer is proper stereo. We destroyed all the bad discs. So those people who bought the bad discs and want to get a proper disc, we're going to try to arrange an exchange. The same goes for a double feature we came out with just a little less than a year ago, of Val Lewton's film Ghost Ship, which was double featured with Bedlam. Ghost Ship, when they were cleaning it up, they cleaned up a moth that they thought was film damage. And I was not around to catch that error. And that's how the discs went out. That too has been corrected and all the discs are fine. But we need to get a consumer exchange infrastructure set up. The person who used to handle it for us, who was with us for years, who was a wonderful person, she was hitting the layoffs. So we're trying to basically rebuild after we've been hit by a tsunami.
Mm-hmm.
And they have brought on, I think, a specific company to handle these kinds of exchanges. And as soon as I have the information, I'm going to send it to Ron to print on Home Theater Forum so that people who bought either Ghost Ship Bedlam or The Opposite Sex can get their discs exchanged.
That's terrific.
That's really important to me.
Yep. So what you're telling me on this Ghost Ship thing is that it really was a bug.
Yeah,
yes.
it was. I mean, it's mentioned in the dialogue, and it was something that just, in the efforts to make everything look beautiful, they didn't realize it wasn't a white scratch. It was an actual moth.
That's hilarious.
But I did, try to communicate out there that we would take care of it. When we had the proper infrastructure, we were able to take care of exchanges, and there were one or two titles we had that were improperly manufactured. There's a glitch, and we're able to turn around really quickly. And I think that's very, very important, is to honor the consumer who has spent their money on your product to stand
Sure.
behind it. So look forward to something on Home Theater Forum very soon where I will be providing the person or email that people can contact to arrange to get a proper date.
That's awesome. As I tell people, go with your gut that things like this are not malice and they're not being ignored. That it's either a business decision or they're simply not aware of it or don't have the program to handle it yet. So I'm glad to see that both of those will get their time to be fixed. So that's cool. Next question is that it seems like things are constantly merging together. I think Time Warner was, the biggest of all time, and then, everybody started shaking down into two or three big companies. Do you expect that history of this business is now mostly over, or do you think we'll see more consolidations?
I, for the sake of people's mental health and happy home life, I hope there isn't any more consolidation.
Mm-hmm.
I know certainly what happened here was horrific in terms of the thousands of people that were laid off because of the AT&T merger,
Yep.
and there have been many people who have been victims of this merger with Discovery because there is some duplication, not in home entertainment, but other areas. They do reality television. Warner Brothers has an unscripted division, ad sales. There are certain areas where there's duplication. So I'm hoping that it's over, but I'd be a fool if I said, yeah, it's definitely over. Who knows what can happen? The merger of Disney and Fox would never have happened in another political atmosphere, but the
Yeah.
politics were just right
Yeah.
at the time that Disney was already so huge, and then to swallow up an entire studio, and basically Fox is gone.
Yeah. It's
People
weird.
can't, and especially look at what that whole company has done to their home entertainment business.
Yep.
They've basically thrown it under the bus in favor of their streaming service. So it's all the more important to me to get the word out that that's not what's happening at Warner Brothers. And it almost did. And thankfully, things are going in the right direction.
Well, we'll keep fingers crossed on that because the consumers for those different streaming services that you listed aren't necessarily the same consumers. The person that's watching the reality TV is not the same guy that might get uh, a Warner Archive subscription or something like that. So hopefully it all
Right.
works out that everybody gets what they're hoping for out of it.
Absolutely.
So one last thing, actually two last questions. First, how do you feel about the future of actual movie theaters? I know a lot of Home Theater Forum members are nervous that there's been a lot of consolidation there, and the COVID didn't help. But it seems like they're making a little bit of a comeback. Do you think that there's always going to be a place for movie theaters, or is it still shaky?
I absolutely am 1,000% of the belief that motion picture exhibition will prevail and survive and thrive.
Awesome.
And people thought radio was going to kill theaters. People thought television was going to kill theaters.
The
The
internet.
fact that the studios were forced to sell their theaters at the same time television came in was a 1-2 punch for the industry, but the industry overcame that. Cable television, home video, streaming, there's still nothing like going to the movies and
Yep.
having a communal experience. Now, the kind of movies that can make a profit in a theatrical release, that is becoming more and more difficult. And I think smaller films are going to be more challenged
Yep.
to have a traditional theatrical exhibition. But the fact that people have really wonderful home theaters where they can enjoy smaller films as well as blockbusters with Atmos, well, that gives people a choice. And there's still going to be a theater someplace that's going to show that small film. It just
Yep.
depends where you live. You know, if you live in a big metropolitan area, the likelihood is there'll be a theater that will show that smaller film.
Yep.
So I'm very bullish on theatrical exhibition.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. I'm just north of Baltimore, and so my local theater is 15, 20 minutes away from me, and I'm a member of the AMC A list. And I got to echo what you're saying. I'm seeing more small budget movies through A list as much as I am the big Dolby Atmos stuff there. So I think the subscriptions have helped me broaden my horizons. I don't know how that'll shake out business wise or if you're in favor of those subscription programs or not, but it's worked out great for me.
Well, that's awesome. Is the Charles Theater still in Baltimore?
It is. It is. In fact, I did a 48-hour film fest a couple of the first years that I was down here, and we exhibited our the movies that we made in the Charles Theater. So yeah, it's still doing well as far as
That's
I know.
awesome. Because
Yeah.
my first job out of college, I was recruited out of the film school I went to, where I was running the film series, and a film company recruited me to work there as soon as I graduated, and I was doing repertory theatrical sales for them for several years before I got into home video, and the Charles Theater was one of my customers.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Like I said,
That's how I remember that.
I've only ever been there for the 48-hour film festival, but I know it's a bastion of that community. I know that there's a lot of folks who really have genuine love for that theater in particular. Nice. So we're about to hit an hour in, and we've just gone through the questions I had written up, and I know Home Theater Forum has a bunch more. But the one last question I want to ask you is, of the things that you have been able to get out the door and announced, what are you most excited for coming up?
That we have announced.
Yeah.
This is they just lowered the price on Amazon last night, as a matter of fact.
Oh.
I am doing cartwheels over our upcoming Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde 1931 version.
Ooh, okay.
With Frederick March. This is from nitrate, original negative, as well as second generation material, because the film was censored for reissue, and they cut a lot out of it. I think about 17 minutes.
Ooh, interesting.
And we had a DVD that we released about 20 years ago that was the full version. Didn't look very good. This looks amazing, and it's as like everything we do. It's meticulously clean, and we spend a lot of time on it. But the thing that's super cool about it is not only do we have a legacy commentary, we recorded a new commentary for it to provide a different perspective, and it's in the movie tone aspect ratio, which is actually a little taller than people are used to seeing.
Okay.
And it's 1.19.
I don't think I've ever seen anything in that.
Very long. It was used probably up until early 1932, and then everything went 137.
Okay.
But this is being presented in its proper aspect ratio for the first time.
Terrific.
So it's a good Halloween. We also have Mark of the Vampire coming, and that's another restoration. So, but Jekyll and Hyde, or I should pronounce it properly, Jekyll.
Oh.
That's how they pronounce it in the movie, and I should learn to pronounce it properly, Dr. Jekyll. And
wow, I'm sure I've never seen that, so I'll add that to my list.
Yeah, I can't. You'll be astounded. The movie's 91 years old, and you can't believe you're looking at a 91-year-old movie.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's it for my list of questions. Of course, we've got 1,000 from Home Theater Forum, and I'm going to apologize up front that we're not going to be able to get to all of them. But I will say I am ecstatic that you are going to be able to answer so many of them. And so for those that don't get asked, we apologize, but hopefully next time. And we thank everybody for sending their thoughts in. The first one is from Jim Burr, and I absolutely echo this 1,000%. He says, "Thanks for a great 20 and 2021 releases, especially the Technicolor stuff." So thank you for that. We're excited that despite all the issues you guys have had, you were able to put out so much great stuff during the pandemic.
During a pandemic and all working from home for 2 years.
Yeah.
That was quite a challenge, and very proud of all that. And most importantly, I want to thank Jim, because people always are very quick to register their angst or, make snarky remarks on the internet, but people very rarely say thank you. And it's all the more important and meaningful when they do. So
Yep.
I really appreciate that.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
You guys have been awesome friends to Home Theater Forum for so long. I guess almost the entirety of its existence. So we hope to continue that for many, many years. So Roland L. and many, many others piped in with, is there anything going on in 3D? What can you tell us about
I
your
never
3D?
thought anybody was going to ask me about that.
I
I
can't
really
imagine.
didn't. We have several 3D, classic 3D films and two classic 3D cartoons,
Hmm.
and the three very best 3D films. Because most of the 3D films that were made were not very good, but there are a handful that were great. And the three very best ones we released quite some time ago, and they look and sound amazing, and we're very proud of them. Kiss Me Kate, Dial M for Murder, and of course, probably one of the most famous of all, House of Wax.
Hmm.
And they were monstrous projects, and they came out great. They've sold great. The rest of the 3D movies are not quite as commercial. One or two of them have a little bit of a little more street cred, and then the others are, of modest commercial value. The amount of people that support 3D is unfortunately diminishing because nobody's making 3D sets anymore,
Yeah.
and they haven't for 6 years now.
Yep.
And only people with projectors can really take advantage of 3D.
Right.
But I haven't given up on it yet, and I'm trying to find a way where we can make it work financially and up to our standards, because it's double the cost of doing a regular movie.
Yeah.
You have to do the left eye
Sure.
and the right eye.
Yep.
But we're not giving up on that yet. And I especially want to stress that I know people are dying for Bugs Bunny and Lumberjack Rabbit and Popeye Ace of Space. And we have not abandoned our classic animation quest. And there are some problems inherent, I hear, with with one of the eyes. One of the negatives on Lumberjack Rabbit had some water damage.
Oh no.
But as we proved with our release of The Wonderful World of Brothers Grimm earlier this year, which was a huge, phenomenal success for us and took years. And we never thought it could happen because the negative had been water damaged under the MGM lot.
Right.
And it came out fantastically well. It was entirely due to the persistence of Dave Strohmeyer, who is the king of Cinerama, and his partner Tom March. They restored the film. Our folks did all the scanning. We brought in every possible piece of film that we could, 65 millimeter IP, all the original negatives and panels, all the separations, everything. And it came out to be just a sensational release that we're so proud of. So water damage doesn't mean that a film can't be done. And we'll never say never. So hopefully this plan I have for 3D may come to fruition. So
Okay.
not a promise, but a hope.
Well, I'm sure it will be encouraging to know to the members to know that they've got you in their corner. I'm kind of
Absolutely.
personally ambivalent on 3D. I do actually have a projector capable of doing 3D, and I've gotten no end of grief from my apathy over it, but I know that it's very important to many of our home theater forum members. So we'll keep the fingers crossed for those guys. So I forget who asked it. This actually got cut out and put back in today, but somebody was asking about what about the silent film era? Do you have any things that you can talk about there?
Well, we've been having a little bit of a problem with silent films because in order to put a silent film out, you need to have a score, and it becomes a very difficult proposition. Um, but the good news is, I'm trying to figure out exactly how many. We probably will have 3 or 4 silent features coming out on Blu-ray next year.
Nice.
And I'm incredibly excited about that because they will not only be coming out on Blu-ray, but they will also be meticulously restored. So they're going to look amazing.
All right.
There's one film, not going to mention any titles, but
Sure.
a very famous movie that I've never seen look good. I've always seen it just filled with dirt and debris and hairs and just looking awful. And now it looks 100 times better. So silent film fans will be getting their wish, and just hold tight and be patient because it might not all come out next year. There may be some things next year and the year after.
Well,
So we'll
th-
see what happens.
you've alluded to this, but next year is pretty important to Warner. It's your 100th anniversary. So do you have big plans on that? And Angela Columbus noted that, and Robert Crawdaddy Crawford wondered if you would be celebrating across all of the Warner properties, including Warner, MGM, RKO, and so on, or just focusing on the Warner archive itself.
Well, I've been jumping up and down since about 2018 saying, hey, it's going to be our 100th anniversary in 2023. We need to start planning now.
Yep, yep, yep.
And basically, no one was paying attention to me or
Oh
listening to
no.
me. But in 2020, they finally kind of said, oh, yeah, we need to do something.
Hmm.
So there is now activity all across the video
Great.
for the 100th anniversary. I think people will be very excited. A lot of titles are going to be coming out from both the Warner Archive and from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment in 4K
Nice.
that represent various parts of our history, both contemporary and classic. Uh, I'm a purist, and I think that Warner Brothers history is Warner Brothers history, and MGM's history should be celebrated the following year when MGM theoretically turns 100,
I see.
except the company that is now MGM is actually United Artists with the MGM name.
Sure.
We own the first 66 years of MGM. But from what I understand, my colleagues will probably be celebrating everything we own. And it's good to acknowledge the fact that for the last 26 years, this has been the home of Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind and
Hmm.
2001 and Ben-Hur and King Kong and Fred and Ginger and so forth and so on. But the history of Warner Brothers as a studio is so interesting and so unique and filled with a diverse group of filmmakers and styles, going back to the silence of the 20s all the way up to the films of now. I think that should be enough to focus on. So, from a Warner Archive perspective, we'll be focusing purely on Warner Brothers. But that doesn't mean we won't be releasing
Right, right,
other
right. Yeah.
films from the library. We certainly will be. But I'm not going to be putting a Warner Brothers 100th birthday label on an MGM movie. That's just
Yeah.
not what I would choose to do. I'll be, uh,
I'm with you on
very,
that.
very, very purist.
Yep.
But most importantly, I don't want any part of the library neglected. So we have a lot of MGM and RKO films planned, as well as Warner films planned. So, and no matter what we do, it won't be enough for some people.
Sure.
But for those who really appreciate all the work that goes into it,
Yep.
I think they'll be very happy.
Well, I keep telling people we are truly living in the golden age of home theater and have an embarrassment of riches across all the different studios and stuff like that. So that I think no matter what you guys do, you're gonna have a great year. And I look forward to that, and I'll start celebrating today. How about that?
Great.
Yeah. So, getting back to restoration, Richard MS wanted to know if there have been any recent unexpected discoveries as far as elements and missing footage, particularly for Matahari, which I guess was announced. I'm not sure.
No, Mata Hari with Greta Garbo and Ramon Navarro was cut for censorship reasons when it was reissued
Mm-hmm.
after the production code. And no, we have not found the cut footage yet. So there's nothing happening with Mata Hari.
I see.
What I can say is there are two Warner Brothers movies which I knew had been released in longer versions to the servicemen in World War II before they were theatrically released after the war here in theaters. And at least one of them has a pretty good chance of coming out as a Blu-ray release, maybe next year, but probably more likely the following year. But I won't give away the title. And then there's another one waiting in the wings that isn't quite as marketable. But this one title is not a short film to begin with, but there's probably another 20 minutes or so that the soldiers got to see that nobody else got to see. And we found 35 millimeter nitrate material. And eventually that's going to come out. If I can make it come out next year, I'll be very, very happy. But right now, I don't have any target date.
That's
But we're always looking.
That is awesome. I actually got a couple of private messages from folks who were saying, I swear I saw this in a Roadshow 70 millimeter print, different movies. And people say I'm crazy, but what you're telling me is that really for different regions, there could have been these different cuts and stuff like that. And so for those of you that emailed me about those, you're not crazy, and maybe those elements will show up sometime in the future. That's pretty cool.
Well, I saw prints of the producers and Funny Girl in repertory theaters
Mm-hmm.
decades after those movies came out that had extra footage in them. I
Cool.
think they were preview prints. I was like in shock. I looked at my friend like sitting with me. I was like, "Can you believe what we're seeing? You know, it's
Yeah.
totally different." So there's a lot of that kind of stuff kicking around, and I think the thing that's most important is when a film has been released and created by its creator and locked in at that length, and then some studio butcher comes around. There are so many famous examples of that. The most famous is probably the Garland Stars Born,
Mm-hmm.
which to this day we've never been able to find all the footage. But the films that were made in the early 30s pre-code that were cut for release after the code, those are particularly painful. And to be able to restore that footage is a very tall order, and it may never happen. But we keep looking,
Yep.
and that's the important thing.
Wow, you guys are the best at doing stuff like that. So if anybody's going to be able to pull it off, I'm sure you guys are right up there. So
Thank you.
thanks for
We
thanks for
try.
addressing that. So Battle Beast and a couple other folks asked, any word on Best Picture winners in the pipeline, and do those get given priority, or do you guys kind of portion them out so that they're not all hitting at once, kind of deal?
Well, we have more than one in the pipeline, and there aren't that many left that aren't released. So I think people will be happy when these come out. And so it's nice to be able to give an affirmative answer.
Nice.
Yes.
I hate to put you on the spot, but do you know how many Best Picture winners are in your archive?
Oh, we have more than any other studio. We have, I think, 22.
Okay. All right. That's an accomplishment all in itself. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's great. So I think you've already addressed this, but Rafael Perez asked any chance of getting back to 5 to 7 releases a month, and you're saying 4 to 5 is probably more realistic.
It could, some months it might be less or more, but
Gotcha.
we're aiming for about that to get back to where we were. Like 2021 was where I had planned 2022 to be.
Gotcha. Okay.
So hopefully 2023 will be
All
that
right.
way.
So
But
stand by, guys.
yep,
It's getting better, but it's a process. So I know your Halloween stuff has already all been announced, right? But SWFF asks, how about some more horror and sci-fi flicks, and maybe even some of the more of the Hammer films?
uh, this is one of the most popular genres,
Hmm.
and one of the most supported, and one of the most cross generational.
Yep.
Uh, and we have we have very few more films for this year. Before next year, we turn on the gas and to overdrive. But we've got another yet to be announced classic sci-fi horror movie coming before the end of the year.
Awesome.
And it is my hope. I can't promise this, but it is my hope to do for our other Hammer horror films, especially the early ones, what we did with Curse of Frankenstein not that long ago with the 2 disc special edition with new special features and 3 aspect ratios so that no one could complain about the
Wow.
aspect ratio.
Okay.
And that release was such a work uh, of great. Um, Everybody was caught up in it. It was
Hmm.
a labor of love for so many people, and I got to do a shout out to Constantine Nazar, who did all the special features and who's just one of the most wonderful human beings on the planet. Nicest guy and so talented. And we've been working together in one fashion or another for, I'd say, close to 20 years now.
Awesome.
Because he worked on the very first Looney Tunes collection we did in 2003, which took 6 years to get greenlit. So it's always a battle.
Yep. So J.C. Reisenbach and others wanted keep bringing up Summer Place, and I'll note that I think that this was the first movie my parents went to on a date back in the back in their salad days. So any word on that?
I would love to see that movie come out, and it deserves to, and I think it would do well. It's not happening at the moment,
Hmm.
but the fact that there isn't a high definition master in the company is obscene,
I see.
and the film needs to come out, and eventually it will. It won't be next year, but maybe the year after.
Okay. Well, keep asking, guys, because they know that you're interested. I was actually surprised that you said you would talk about this one because I've seen some drama on it today on Twitter where some of the original writers were asking their followers to kind of ping Warner about it. But what can you tell us about Babylon 5?
Okay, this is something that I know there is a vast, passionate audience
Yeah,
for,
rabid.
and it should have happened a long time ago. But the cost to do it was enormous, and the fact that all the special effects were done low res,
Hmm.
standard def, and all that. Well, all of that's been rectified, and we could thank the folks at HBO Max for paying for that work. But I told my colleagues, especially those who are specifically responsible for television content, I said, we have got to do something with Bab 5.
Hmm.
Uh, the audience out there doesn't care that it's available for streaming, they want to own it. And I personally am more of a Trekkie and a Doctor Who fan,
Hmm.
like fanatic. Doctor Who up through Matt Smith, and that's where it ends
Okay.
for me. But Star Trek, like in all forms, basically.
Nice.
Although I'm not crazy about some of the new stuff, but very much looking forward to season 3 of Picard.
Nice.
Um, that being said, what I like means nothing. It's all about what the fans want and if
Sure.
there's enough support. This is so obvious to me. And we just have to find the right way to do it. Is it season sets? Is it a complete series? It's still a very expensive proposition in terms of the costs of packaging, compression, and authoring. Do you
Hmm.
want to do extras? All that. None of those questions have been answered. But this has been, once the remastering had begun, this was something where we all agreed this needs to be done. What's the best way to do it? The fact that the company has been through such, for lack of a better word, hell
Hmm.
for the last couple of years kind of took the eye off the focus on this. But I think the focus will be back on this and it will happen. If I have anything to say about it,
All right. Well, so
so
I know we don't need to encourage the Rabid fans to keep cheering it on,
oh my
but
God, for
but
all the years that we couldn't do it, we
yep.
were still getting the letters and the calls and
Hmm.
tweets and the posts on Facebook, and
Yeah.
so
So it wasn't that you were
it
ignoring it. It was just, the economics of it and the rights
right,
and all of that stuff.
right.
So, yeah.
And now it can be, now it can happen,
Awesome.
and it
Awesome. So
will
stand
happen.
by for that. So a lot of folks are interested. I know you brought up Bugs Bunny and a couple Popeye and a couple other things, but a lot of folks are interested in more classic animation. 80s Forever notes the hints were for a lot of animation in 2022, and you said that kind of got delayed. So good thoughts for 2023 on the animation front.
Yes, what I had planned for 2022 will start gearing up again in 2023. And the first project, which I had hoped to have out for fourth quarter this year, we uh, we haven't even gotten negative material in because it's nitrate that has to come from
Hmm.
across the country. So there's going to be more animation and of all kinds, not just theatrical animation, but more Hanna-Barbera and television animation, and some of it may be on DVD, but the focus is on blue, especially for the theatrical.
Cool. Every time I think of you guys shipping nitrate across the country, all I can think of is Snowpiercer, and you've got this this train just barreling across the country to make this very very important delivery. So
Well, the thing is that we all kind of feel that we wish we didn't have to ship it anywhere,
yeah,
because if something happens,
yeah.
it could be disastrous.
Hmm.
So
Not just to the elements, but I mean, it could cause fires and other stuff too.
that right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's we're only allowed to keep 90 minutes worth of footage on the lot at any given
Wow, I
time.
didn't know that.
Yeah, so if we're doing a Technicolor film that was shot nitrate, that means it's 3 rolls of nitrate film for every roll of film, yellow, cyan, and magenta.
Hmm.
So it takes a very, very long time
Yeah.
to get these things done. And that's why all of our recent Technicolor releases, I think the last one was probably private. The Adventures of Don Juan, which came out in July.
Hmm.
But there are so many more in the queue, and it's particularly exciting because we're now able to work directly off the original, if the original still exists, and if the original, there was a terrible fire in 1978 at George Eastman House where a lot of MGM original nitrate was blown up in a fire.
Yeah.
And uh, separation positive safety copies were made before the footage was sent. So if there are many movies where we have like the first 4 reels exist in Technicolor nitrate negative, but the second 4 reels we only have separations.
Mm.
Well, when we were working off interpositives, that meant that the first half of the movie would be second generation, and the second half of the movie would be fourth generation.
Mm.
And it didn't look really good. And when a lot of these interpositives were made in the 90s, a lot of them were made by really good labs and looked terrific. And equally, there were some made by bad labs, and they looked awful. They were out of focus. And we have corrected that.
Oh, okay.
Dodge City and Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex are just examples of those that were horrible looking because they were completely out of registration and out of focus. And now the Blu-rays look proper.
Terrific. So, also on the cartoon section, is there any plans for a like collaboration with Cartoon Network or anything like that?
Well, now that we're not siloed, the Cartoon Network is all under our aegis.
Okay.
It used to be the head of Cartoon Network's home video arm. They distributed through us, but we didn't do any of the programming or marketing. Well, she is now one of our executives
Okay.
within Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. And I just talked to her a couple of days ago. I guess it was, it was last week, actually. I'm losing all track of time. It's like,
Sure.
today is Monday. We were just talking about specifically all these really great Cartoon Network shows that were started and never completed. And the collectors are itching to have full seasons, full
Yeah.
series, I should
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
of a lot of those shows. So I made that very clear, and she was very supportive.
Great. Okay. Cool. So, also talking about collabs, have you guys done any farm out work to places like Criterion, or would you ever consider that? One member, Deep
We
Scan.
have been in partnership with Criterion for, I think, 11 years
Okay.
now. It started with just one film,
Mm-hmm.
Badlands, and then it became another 30, and then we added more,
Okay.
and we added more. We think of the folks at Criterion as family.
I see.
They are partners. We have a multifaceted relationship with them because the Criterion Channel licenses films for their SVOD service from Warner Brothers Television Distribution. HBO Max licenses Criterion-owned content to show
Oh,
on HBO Max, and we've been sub-licensing particular movies, whether it's a filmmaker request or whether it's Criterion's request or it fits better with Criterion. It was my idea when Criterion wanted to go into 4K. I felt it was poetic justice that they released Citizen Kane because that was their very first release on Laserdisc.
okay.
And of course, they loved the idea, and I made it
Sure.
happen.
Nice.
And I felt that it was the right place for it because they would be able to do all the supplements that we wouldn't necessarily have the budget or the
All right.
manpower to do.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful, wonderful relationship.
I guess I hadn't put titles in my head because I wasn't aware of that deep relationship. So that's good. Hopefully we'll see more of
So
that.
there's a lot more surprises to come,
Okay.
and a lot of contemporary ones as well as classic.
Okay. Well, Deep Scan had his own specific titles that he was hoping for. We'll skip over those for now. I do want to go back to the silent films. It was Arthur Powell. I wonder where he got that name. Who came up with a list of silent films, but one that popped up a couple times was Captain Blood. Can we talk about that one at all?
Well, I don't think anything's going to happen with the silent version of Captain Blood, but there is something happening with the remake with Errol Flynn,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't say anything more than that.
Gotcha. Okay.
But there are more silent films, including the most requested ones that all know who
Mm-hmm.
you are out there.
Sure.
Have patience. Good things are around the corner.
Gotcha. And it was Mark P. who asked us about the opposite sex replacement that you've already talked about. So stand by for
Right.
that, Mark P. Xochipil wants to know anything for fans of 70 millimeter, and Ryan's daughter is one of the ones that keeps coming up on that.
Nothing. Yes, I know it. You have to remember, I read the forums every day, if not several times a
Sure.
day. It's kind of an addiction. It's been going on for a long time. It's probably not good for my mental health, but
Mm-hmm.
no, the best way to know what the people want is to read what people have to say and be able to separate the intelligent comments from the ridiculous comments.
Gotcha.
And I know people want these movies, especially Ryan's daughter. It's an enormous cost, but here's the good but. Um, Warner Brothers Motion Picture Imaging now has a 65 millimeter head for its top of the line scanner.
Oh, cool.
So that means that we used to uh, we used to not have the capability to do scanning of 65 millimeter negative in house. Now we do.
That's great.
So I think a lot of good is going to come from that, but nothing is announceable at this time.
Okay. No, we'll stand by. Keith Cobby had noted somebody had hinted about Three Little Words in the past. Any update there?
Well, I had talked about the fact that the negative, Technicolor negative of Three Little Words was here for scanning and being put through our patented recombination process that we used to call ultra resolution. Um, we don't have a date yet. No master has been made yet. The material's been scanned, so eventually it's gonna come out and make a lot of people very happy. Fun movie.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, and the last of the general questions was any specific plans for re-releasing things that have already been on DVD onto higher resolution like Blu-ray and 4K?
Absolutely. We have been doing that, as far back as Goodfellas.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, we haven't been doing enough of it, but it's so expensive. It's so expensive. It's 4 times the cost of doing something for Blu-ray because you have to do 4 times the amount of dirt cleanup.
Sure, yeah.
And you really have to be careful what you're doing. And we've been careful, so is everybody else. But when I saw, for example, I know the question specifically is about North by Northwest.
Yes, yeah.
Obviously, wide format film, whether it's Technorama or VistaVision or 65 millimeter, they benefit on 4K like
Yeah.
nothing else
Sure.
does.
Yeah.
So I want to see all of those happen, especially the ones that are good and that will make money. Universal was very successful with their first Hitchcock collection on 4K, enough that they did a second Hitchcock collection. So it's not all I can do is make recommendations, and my other colleagues make final decisions based on doing the financials and comparative sales analysis to other things because we're a business and we have
Sure.
to make money. That being said, look at the films that are coming out now, like Poltergeist and The
Mm-hmm.
Lost Boys and all the Christmas movies that are coming. And there are some 4K classic Warner Brothers films that will be coming next year, tied in with the 100th. So that's all really exciting. North by Northwest is not on the schedule for next year, but I have a feeling it might be very likely for 2024. I'll be pushing for it like crazy. It also, I don't like my personal favoritism to get in the way of anything,
Mm-hmm.
but that's one of my favorite movies. And also,
You pull rank.
it is one of our most profitable
Yeah,
movies.
yeah.
It's not
Sure.
like I'm talking about some obscure melodrama or a monogram cowboy movie. This is
Right.
North by Northwest,
Right. Yep.
arguably Hitchcock's greatest
Sure.
movie.
Yep.
I can't decide if it's North by Northwest or Psycho or Vertigo. They're all like, which of your children do you love more?
Yeah.
But this is
Yeah.
our only. We have 6 Hitchcock movies, but of the 6, this is my absolute favorite.
Gotcha.
And it's just dying for it and crying out for it.
Gotcha.
And so let's keep fingers and toes crossed.
Okay, so the last of our general questions, I don't even know what it means, and I Googled it and didn't know what it meant, but you said you'd address it. Mark Brown asked, what is Warner's position on using Perspecta on MGM titles? What does that mean, and what's he asking for?
Well, perspective sound was a process that was devised basically to try to emulate a stereo effect. It would use tones, inaudible tones, to move monophonic optical audio around theaters
Oh, that's
that
neat.
were too cheap to install magnetic stereophonic
Sure.
equipment.
Okay.
And it was a different company that came up with this idea. So many films that had perspective tracks were also recorded in 4-track stereo.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's much more preferential. It
Yeah.
sounds a hell of a lot better.
Yeah.
Um, but we do have a perspective optical head, and Warner Brothers Post Production Sound has been doing some testing on it, and it's possible that we might use it at some point if we find a monophonic film that has a perspective track. Excuse me, a perspective track.
Okay.
But at this point, it's something we're open to and have been doing tests.
Gotcha. Well, that's all the general questions. I know you've got a hard stop here. Can we get another 10, 15 minutes out of you, or you got to go now?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna try to buzz through some of these last specific titles that everybody's asking about. And I'm gonna kind of prioritize them a little bit, and in particular, I'm gonna jump right to Mark Mays. Wanted to know about Gone with the Wind possibility of showing up in 4K. We know that Gone with the Wind has had some political challenges recently, and has that factored into it?
I think that was a factor 2+ years ago when they pulled it off HBO Max because somebody wrote uh, an incendiary article in the paper,
Mm-hmm.
and HBO Max pulled it off their service and put it back on their service with contextualized supplementary material. I
Gotcha.
happen to think very highly of the movie, to put it mildly, and I
Yeah.
think it's a very important film
Yeah. And
in the
beloved too.
history of cinema.
Yeah.
And it's also the cost of doing. It's not just the cost of doing 2 movies; it's the cost of doing 6 movies, because you've got your Technicolor negative, which each reel is 3 separate colors. So it's a gargantuan expense. But I absolutely think it would make money and be profitable for the company, be very, very popular. Who would not want to have that movie in their
Sure.
library
Yeah.
in 4K? Now, I'll give you an example of how technology will improve. We did tests on The Wizard of Oz when 4K first came around 2015, and they were awful.
Mm.
Dorothy had a beard of grain that made her look like Pluto in the Popeye cartoon. And I said, oh, well, we'll never be able to do that. Well, tools came around and things changed. And I saw the tests on Wizard of Oz in 2018, and they were gorgeous. And by 2019, we did a beautiful 4K disc.
Yep.
So we know that these older Technicolor films can look great in 4K. If they're done right, they're going to cost a fortune, but uh, often the money can be made back. It certainly was on Oz. I think Gone with the Wind deserves it. I'd love to see it happen. I've advocated for it. I hope it will happen. And the other one I really hope happens is The Adventures of Robin Hood, which was made the year before and was one of our very first Blu-ray releases.
Yep.
And that Blu-ray is 16 years old, and boy, does it look it.
Mm.
It needs to be redone. But I could give you a list of several hundred
Yeah.
movies that I think need to be redone.
Yeah. It's all about
So,
priorities, right? Yeah.
right.
So what about things like classic TV, and including Abbott and Costello and Lucy and Gilligan's Island and stuff like that? How does that stuff get prioritized to go out?
Well, I think Lucy fans are going to be happy in the not too distant future. Um, I would love to see the George Reeves Superman series get restored. It's a pretty tall order, because I know that at least one episode from the first season, we only have 16 millimeter material,
Oh,
which
okay.
is horrifying.
Yeah.
Um, and it went through a lot of different hands before it ended up with us. So maybe we'll be able to find that episode with 35 millimeter sources. But
Hmm.
I think it was supposed to happen, and then it got put on the side. I just think it is an absolute must. Superman is part of our ethos at this company,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't give up hope.
Okay.
Gilligan's Island, no one has really brought that up or discussed it, so I don't know if that's going to happen.
Hmm.
Uh, but you never know.
Gotcha. There was a DVD set of that at one point, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
everything's been on DVD.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I shouldn't say everything because there have been a lot of really popular series we haven't been able to put on DVD because of music clearance issues.
Hmm.
But we've made some significant headway in that regard. So people may be seeing some DVD releases of some of those series come out that weren't able to come out before.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
that's a little hint, hint.
Well, Duke Togo brought up something I hadn't heard about. Apparently, that there's a company called Second to Sight that's doing a Hitcher restoration in the UK. Do you have any ties to that?
Well, when I heard that we were taking over the marketing and mastering and everything else of HBO's library, the first thing I talked to my boss about was the Hitcher.
Okay.
I said, we have got to. I said, I know you're thinking about HBO as a television company and TV movies,
Hmm.
but they have a small group of theatrical films that have been sorely overlooked. And I was talking about films, not just The Hitcher. There's Fort Apache, The Bronx, and Ricochet. Don't Tell Mom, The Babysitter's Dead. There's a lot of really interesting movies in there, as well as, of course, HBO made for movies that maybe only came out on DVD that
Mm.
might make for a good 4K. There's a lot of opportunity there. So meanwhile, the folks in the UK who got the rights, our rights in the Hitcher are only domestic. So we had the negative at HBO, and I haven't been privy to the latest conversations, but the goal was that if we were going to uh, give them access to our negative, that we would get some kind of access or participation in this film. It's only been available like 4:3. It's just an abomination, and this is
Mm.
such a beloved cult favorite.
Yeah, it's one of my
It needs
favorites for
to
sure.
come
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you got good taste. What can I tell you, Sam?
Hey, I even like the
Um,
remake, so that tells you something.
yeah, I mean, but this just like because to give HBO people credit, they did a phenomenal job with the things they made.
Hmm.
Doing those gorgeous sets on Game of Thrones
Sure.
and all the Sopranos and all the series that they did. And they do wonderful programming even now, and God bless them, and they're great people. But theatrical features was not their business, so they
Right.
didn't focus on that the way we would have, and we didn't have a seat at the table as to what came out. Now we do, so hopefully there'll be more of those to come. So that's a positive answer.
Awesome. A bunch of folks, including a Stare fan and Joel Arndt, are interested in Fred and Ginger movies. Any possibility of those?
Well, you're not going to find a bigger Fred and Ginger fan than I am. That being said, the films are in such tattered condition
Oh.
because they were so popular and they were reissued a gazillion times. Anytime RKO needed money, it was either reissue King Kong or reissue Fred and Ginger. Um, so There's nothing happening at the moment. Uh, there is only one of the 9 Fred and Ginger movies where the original negative still exists.
Bummer.
The materials are really worn, but I think they're going to trickle out slowly. These things that require a lot of work. There were things I thought we'd never be able to do. I thought, oh, we'll never be able to do a Night at the Opera. We'll never be able to do The Thin Man because the elements
Hmm.
look like they've been run over by a train. Well, we did The Thin Man, came out gorgeous. We were able to do the whole series.
Yep.
We were able to put out a Night at the Opera. So these things are possible. So the classic movie fans are in for a Lollapalooza next year.
Okay.
It's really going to be very, very exciting. And a lot of the films will be unexpected. There'll be some surprises.
I love that. I'm all about finding classics that haven't gotten their time in the sun for sure. And I do note that Traveling Man and a couple other folks were asking for more Marx Brothers. So good news on that.
Well, I just talked about Night at the Opera and
Yep.
how well it did and
Yep.
how
Yep.
great it looked. I'm a huge Marx Brothers fan. I agree with that.
Yep. I got my start watching Groucho Marx "You Bet Your Life" at 5:30 in the morning on Saturday mornings when I
Oh,
was a
love
kid.
that
So
show.
yeah. So definitely
I
a
used to watch
favorite.
it at 1:30 in the morning in New York.
Okay.
And that was when I was in junior high school, so that didn't go over too well with my parents.
I see. Uh, how about the Prisoner of Zenda? A couple folks asked about that. I'm not familiar with that one. Apparently, there's
Okay,
some issue with
well, the
the.
1937
Yeah,
Prisoners and
yeah.
the elements are really bad,
Bad, yeah.
and we're still on the search for better ones. Nothing's happening with the 1952 remake yet, but it's a perfect candidate for a Technicolor restoration like we've been doing, and I hope we will be able to do that soon. And
Okay.
obviously, we'd like to do both movies together.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense. That makes tons of sense. All right, the last question I have. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and we're sorry we can't get to everything, guys. But we're going on 2 hours here. But a lot of folks were asking about Northwest Passage and Raintree Country, which I guess had been reported to have issues with their elements before. Any update on either of those?
Well, Northwest Passage has no issues with its the negative's fine, and it needs to be recombined and restored like these other Technicolor films do. Just
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been done yet. There was an interpositive made in I guess the 90s that doesn't look very good, and it wasn't made very well, and that's why when you see it now it's standard definition only, and it's muddy and ugly, and hopefully we can make it look beautiful. And that's not as Orson Welles once said, a wearying one indeed. That is not.
Okay.
Raintree County, on the other hand, is
County, not country. Sorry.
yes, that is the quintessential opposite
Yeah.
of fairly straightforward. It is a nightmare of complexity. I went into, I'm not going to take up more time on your podcast going into the details of it because it's like a 15-20 minute explanation.
Yep.
But I would encourage people to go to theextras.tv
Mm-hmm.
and look for the Warner Archive August mailbag,
Yeah,
where I went into explicit detail
Yep.
on all the problems, the fact that the negative was cut, that the negative is terribly faded, that the separations were cut, and they're in a different aspect ratio than the purple release prints that we have of the long version. It's just a mess. And it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money to put something together that at best will still be imperfect.
Gotcha.
So it's something that both myself and the gentleman who is our director of preservation, who's also been a dear friend and a good colleague of mine for a very long time, we're both dedicated to getting it done, and we've been trying like hell. But we need to also have a little bit more of a stable company environment, and all indications are we're getting there. So there's hope, but I don't want to give up false hope. It may be several years away. So it's just something we're obviously aware of,
Yeah.
and it's not easy. And I will just leave it at that
Yeah.
without further editorialization.
Yep. And I've already linked to the August mailbag and the call for questions, and we will certainly put that in the show notes for this podcast, which should be up later tonight. This was a terrific conversation. You've been extremely generous with your time, extremely generous with your honesty and forthrightness, and I hope that all of your corporate overlords take it in the positive way that it was presented, and I hope that you guys have nothing but the best going into 2023 for your 100th anniversary.
Well, thank you.
This was a
On
great.
behalf of everyone here, there's a lot of people that do other things in addition to uh, helping Warner Archive be what it is. But there are an awful lot of people that make it happen, and it couldn't happen without them.
Mhm.
So if I were wearing a hat, I'd take my hat off to them,
Thank
but
you.
I'm not wearing a hat. So
Well,
what can I tell you?
your passion and reverence for the history comes through, and I think that if every merger started with that rather than the idea that things were going to be optimized and exploited and stuff like that, they would have worked out so much better than many of them have. So I appreciate that, and I know all the members of Home Theater Forum do, and we look forward to sometime seeing you out there in Hollywood in the future.
I hope so. And thank you for the plug for the library, because the greatest gift our owners could learn about and savor is, I will quote Martin Scorsese, who was in a documentary about film preservation.
Yep.
You take care of your library and it will take care of you.
That's
There are so many bounties and gifts in these thousands of films that can only add to the corporate coffers if the films are treated right. And that's why preservation everywhere is so important. So support your local preservation people.
and support all the studios too, because you guys have had a raw couple years. So we're all pulling for you, and we're pulling for the movie theaters, and we're pulling for physical media. We know where our bread's buttered, and we're trying to make sure that you guys can all survive and thrive.
Well, thank you, Sam. It's much appreciated.
Yep. Thanks for your time, George, and we'll talk to you next time.
I look forward to it.
All right.